Everyone avoided the reclusive billionaire's mute son, until a waitress brought him a warm cookie. The ocean was restless that night. Wind moved through the cypress trees above the cliffs, carrying the smell of salt and something older, loneliness, maybe. And there, balanced between sky and sea, stood the Kingston estate, all glass and marble, glowing like a lighthouse no one had tended in years. Inside, music floated from a string quartet, thin and elegant, the kind of sound that fills a room but never warms it. Guests in black ties and glittering gowns drifted from table to table, smiling with their mouths while their eyes stayed elsewhere. The gala was for charity, one of those evenings where wealth tries to remember kindness. At the far edge of the ballroom, Maya Ellis adjusted the tray in her hands. Her white shirt was a little too tight at the shoulders, her bow tie slightly crooked, but she kept her back straight. It was her first night working for the catering company, and she'd promised herself she'd make it through without dropping a single flute of champagne. She moved carefully between clusters of guests, offering hors d'oeuvres she couldn't pronounce. They didn't really see her. To them, she was just part of the wallpaper, another nameless waitress in black and white. Still, she noticed everything. The way laughter stopped when someone important walked by. The hush that followed the mention of Damian Kingston. The billionaire host who hadn't appeared yet. And most of all, the small figure sitting alone near the grand piano at the edge of the hall. A boy, maybe 9, maybe 10, dressed in a miniature tuxedo. His hands rested in his lap, still as stone. While adults floated around him like ghosts, he stared at the floor, eyes distant, detached, as if the world had muted itself. Maya hesitated. He looked so out of place among the glitter and glass. Every few minutes a server passed near him, saw his face, and quietly veered away. Someone whispered that he was the son, the only one, the one nobody spoke to. She caught herself watching him too long and quickly looked away. But something about that quiet boy stayed with her, the way he seemed wrapped in silence, not by choice, but by something heavier. A voice crackled in her earpiece. "Station 3 needs refills. Move, Maya." She blinked, nodding to no one, and turned toward the kitchen doors. But before pushing through them, she glanced back once more. The boy hadn't moved, hadn't looked up. The music swelled, the chandeliers shimmered, and still. There he sat, a small island in a sea of noise. And in that instant, before she even knew his name, Maya Ellis felt a tug she couldn't explain. Not pity, not curiosity. Something quieter, deeper, the kind of pull that starts stories without asking permission. The night would go on, the guests would toast and dance, and the storm would break over the cliffs before morning. But that small moment, that brief glance across the room, would be the first crack in the walls of the lonely estate. The kitchen was alive with noise, clattering pans, shouting chefs, the hiss of steam. Maya slipped through the chaos like a ghost, setting her empty tray on the counter. Her supervisor barked something about speed and posture, but the words blurred. All she could think about was that boy, the one sitting by the piano, alone while 100 people danced around him. She shouldn't care. She had her own life to keep afloat. Rent due next week. An extra shift tomorrow. The constant ache in her feet. But some faces, they stay with you. When she returned to the ballroom, the scene hadn't changed. The music had shifted. Slower now, softer. But the boy was still there, motionless. Every now and then, someone would glance his way, whisper and look away quickly. And Maya noticed how, whenever a waiter walked near him, they'd tense up like they were afraid. Finally, curiosity got the better of her. While she was refilling glasses near the back table, she leaned toward another waitress. "Hey, that kid, the one by the piano. Who is he?" The other waitress raised an eyebrow. "You don't know?" She nodded toward the boy. "That's Ethan Kingston, the boss's son." "Oh," Maya murmured. He looked so lost. "Yeah, but don't go near him. Trust me." "Why?" The waitress lowered her voice. "He doesn't talk. Hasn't since his mom died. Some say he hasn't said a word in years." Maya blinked. "Years?" The waitress shrugged, glancing nervously toward the security staff. "They say he's not right, or maybe just broken. Either way, Mr. Kingston doesn't like anyone near him. It's complicated." Then she was gone, carrying her tray into crowd, leaving Maya with a swirl of thoughts. She looked back at the boy, Ethan. His dark hair fell into his eyes, and his suit sleeves were a little too long, like he'd outgrown them without anyone noticing. He sat perfectly still, his fingers resting on his knees, but his gaze was fixed on something specific. Maya followed it. Across the room, servers were bringing out trays of dessert. Tiny pastries, fruit tarts, chocolate mousse, and crystal cups. But when one of them passed near Ethan, his eyes flickered, not greed, not excitement, just attention, like something familiar had brushed against a forgotten part of him. The tray drifted past. The boy's face went blank again, and Maya, standing by the column with her own empty tray, felt that same small tug in her chest as before. It didn't make sense, this urge to walk across the room and say something, anything. But there was something about the way the boy's silence filled the air, like it was asking for someone to listen. She tore her gaze away, forcing herself to focus on work. But it didn't help. Every time she passed the corner of the ballroom, her eyes searched for him again. And every time he was there, quiet, still, untouched by all the noise and light. When she finally turned back toward the kitchen, she caught herself whispering under her breath, almost like a promise to no one. He just looks like he needs a little kindness, that's all. The words disappeared into the hum of the gala. But somewhere deep inside the mansion, the wind shifted against the windows, like the house itself had heard her. And in that moment, without knowing it, Maya Ellis took her first small step toward changing two broken lives, one silent boy and one father too afraid to listen. The night had started to quiet down. Guests were laughing softer now, their voices blending into the low hum of the string music. The scent of sugar drifted out from the kitchen, warm and comforting, so different from the cold polish of the ballroom. Maya stood near the counter, wiping her hands on her apron. Someone had just taken a tray of cookies out of the oven, golden brown, soft in the middle, still steaming. She stared at them for a moment, the sweetness cutting through the smell of champagne and perfume still clinging to her clothes. Her mind wandered back to the boy, Ethan Kingston, still sitting by the piano, untouched by the night, so still he almost blended into the background. No one had gone near him. No one even looked at him anymore. She hesitated. She shouldn't interfere. The other servers had warned her, don't talk to him, don't even try. But kindness doesn't always wait for permission. Without thinking, she picked up one of the cookies. It was warm against her palm. She set it gently on a small white plate, added a napkin, and just looked at it for a moment. It wasn't much, just sugar, butter, chocolate. But something about it felt right. Human. Simple. Taking a breath, she stepped back into the ballroom. The lights seemed brighter now, the music louder. Her heartbeat matched it, quick and nervous. She moved quietly through the crowd, weaving between clusters of guests until she reached the piano. Ethan was still there, his gaze fixed on nothing. His hands were folded neatly in his lap. Maya crouched slightly, careful not to startle him. Her voice came out soft. Hey, I thought you might like one. They're fresh out of the oven. He didn't move, didn't even blink. She set the plate down beside him on the small table. The cookies still warm enough to fog the air. It's still warm, she added, almost to herself. Then she waited. A second, two. Just as she was about to leave, his eyes shifted. Slowly, uncertainly, they lifted toward her. It wasn't a long look, just a flicker. But in that flicker, something passed, fragile, searching. He looked at the cookie. His small fingers moved, hesitant at first, then surer. He picked it up carefully, like it might crumble at his touch. Maya held her breath. He took a bite, a small one, the tiniest. Crumbs fell onto his sleeve. He chewed slowly. Then his shoulders relaxed, just slightly. And for the first time all night, the air around him seemed to soften. Maya smiled, not wide, not forced, just a quiet, real one. She didn't say anything. Didn't want to break whatever this was. She started to stand, ready to slip away. But Ethan's hand moved again. He broke the cookie in half and pushed one piece, uneven crumbling, toward her. Maya froze. He wasn't looking at her now, but the gesture was deliberate, gentle. She knelt again, her throat tightening. She reached out slowly and took the piece with both hands, like it was something precious. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't answer, but for a brief second his lips curved. Not a smile, not quite, but something lighter, something alive. Maya stayed there for a moment longer, memorizing the quiet between them. Then she rose and walked back toward the kitchen. Behind her, Ethan looked down at the half of the cookie he still held. He studied it, then took another small bite. The music played on, soft and distant. The laughter of strangers filled the ballroom. But in that one quiet corner, a boy who hadn't spoken in years began to remember what warmth felt like. The ballroom was emptying. Glasses clinked softly as the last of the guests drifted toward the doors, their laughter fading into the night. Maya wiped her hands on her apron, trying to steady the strange flutter in her chest. That moment with Ethan, the cookie, the way his eyes had finally lifted, kept replaying in her mind. She was startled when a shadow fell across the kitchen doorway. Damian Kingston stood there, his expression unreadable, hands tucked loosely into his pockets. The firelight from the sideboard cast a glow on his sharp features, highlighting the exhaustion and grief buried beneath the elegance of his suit. "You're the one who gave him a cookie," he said, his voice low, calm, but carrying an edge that made Maya's stomach twist. Maya swallowed. "Yes, sir. I'm sorry if that was out of line." He looked hungry, and "He doesn't eat with strangers," Damien interrupted. The words landed heavily in the kitchen. Maya's pulse quickened. "I didn't mean to upset him," she murmured. "No," Damien said after a pause. "You didn't, but you should understand something." He leaned against the edge of the counter, eyes distant, staring at the polished floors as if he could see straight through them into the past. Ethan hasn't spoken in 4 years, he thought. Not a word since his mother died. For years of silence, of careful routines and quiet observation, of people afraid to approach, afraid to break him. "You're new," he said finally, as if voicing a thought aloud. "Yes, sir. First night," Maya admitted. Damien nodded slowly. "You weren't told much about him then." "Only that he doesn't talk much," she replied. A faint sigh escaped him. He ran a hand down his face, tired. He hasn't spoken since that day. The accident. The night his mother died. Maya felt a pang in her chest. "I wasn't trying to intrude. You weren't intruding," he said, cutting her off. "But this is our world, Maya. His world. And it's fragile. He needs stability. Predictability. People tend to come with good intentions and leave chaos. I can't let that happen again." She nodded slowly, trying to hold back her fear, her guilt, her frustration at the rules she hadn't known she'd broken. "I understand," she whispered. "I just thought maybe he was lonely." Damien's expression softened, just slightly. He turned toward the window, the city light spilling across his face. The firelight flickered behind him, casting shadows that seemed to echo the grief he carried. "He is lonely," he admitted quietly, almost to himself. Maya's throat tightened. Maybe it wasn't just a cookie. Maybe it was someone noticing him, she said softly. Damien didn't answer immediately. He glanced back at her, eyes still unreadable but a fraction less cold. "Finish your shift. Go home. I'll talk to the agency. They'll reassign you. It's nothing personal." Maya's heart sank, but she nodded. "Of course. Thank you for the opportunity." She turned to leave, hand on the doorknob, when a sound stopped her, a tiny, hesitant voice, almost swallowed by the night. "Cookie." Maya froze. Ethan stood at the threshold of the study, small and uncertain, holding the empty napkin she'd left him. His gaze flicked toward her, shy and cautious, yet unmistakably deliberate. She whispered, "Hi, Ethan." He didn't respond with words. Instead, he took the napkin and placed it carefully on Damien's desk. Then, as silently as he had appeared, he padded back down the hall. Damien remained frozen behind his desk, staring at the napkin, creased, empty, yet somehow full. For the first time in years, he felt a crack in the wall he had built around his grief. And somewhere deep inside, he realized that the night hadn't ended with a cookie. It had ended with a glimpse of possibility, fragile and small, but real. The next morning, the mansion felt different, quieter, softer, as if the walls themselves had been touched by the small warmth of last night. Maya moved through the kitchen, clearing trays and tidying crumbs, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Ethan, to the way his eyes had finally flicked toward her, and to the way his tiny hand had trembled as he held the cookie. The quiet was broken by the sound of footsteps on the polished floors. Maya turned to see Damien standing at the hallway's edge. His jacket was draped over one arm, and his face carried the gravity of a man weighed down by years of loss and cautious control. "Maya," he said, voice steady but softer than before. "Yes, sir," she replied, unsure what to expect. He stepped closer, pausing as if measuring his words. "You handled him with care. Most people, well, they don't know what to do with him. They look away, treat him like a problem to solve." Maya's heart fluttered. I didn't think of it like that. I just wanted him to feel seen." A faint, almost imperceptible nod. "That means something," Damien said. "More than you realize. And it's rare to see someone not flinch at his silence. You didn't look away." She hesitated, unsure how to respond. Her chest tightened as a mix of fear and hope swirled inside her. "There's a reason I'm here," he continued, voice steady, deliberate. "I want you to stay. Not just tonight, not just for the shift, but longer, permanent, if you're willing." Maya blinked, caught off guard. She searched his face, looking for any hint of what he truly meant, any hidden motive, but all she found was quiet gravity. I'd be willing," she said slowly, her voice catching slightly. Damien's shoulders relaxed just a fraction. "Good, because he needs someone like you. Someone patient. Someone who sees him. Not the silence, not the fear, not the absence, but him." For a moment, the mansion felt still. The hum of the morning outside, the distant bird song, all faded into the background. Maya realized that in that quiet pause, she had become more than a temporary visitor. She had become part of something fragile, something that needed care and attention, something worth protecting. "Thank you," she whispered, voice soft but certain. He gave her a small, almost relieved nod. "You're welcome. Just keep doing what you did last night. That's all I ask." As Maya returned to the kitchen, gathering her apron and trays, she felt the weight of possibilities settle on her shoulders. Not heavy, not burdensome, but steady. She had taken a step into a world that had seemed untouchable, into a life filled with quiet grief and cautious hope. And for the first time, she felt like she belonged there, in that mansion, in that small corner of the world where a mute boy and his father were learning to be seen again. The days that followed settled into a quiet rhythm. The mansion was still grand, with its polished floors, towering ceilings, and crystal chandeliers. But in the early mornings and late afternoons, it softened. Maya found herself moving through it like a shadow that was finally allowed to linger. She delivered trays, arranged silverware, and passed quietly through the hallways, but her mind was never far from Ethan. Every day, she would find him in the same corner of the drawing room, sitting on the plush rug beside the piano, his fingers brushing lightly over the keys, though no notes came out. Sometimes he traced shapes in the dust on the grand piano lid, or watched the sunlight spill across the polished wood. Maya learned to speak in a language that didn't need words. A soft hum, a gentle step, a tilt of her hand, small motions that meant come here, stop, or look. And slowly, Ethan began to respond. A finger would lift, a foot would tap, his head would turn, a tiny nod, a slight smile, almost imperceptible but unmistakable. There was no rush, no expectation, just time spent in quiet presence. She would set a warm drink beside him or place a cookie on the table, and he would accept it with a careful hand, examining it, sometimes sharing it, sometimes saving it for later. Each gesture became a conversation, a bridge between worlds that words could not reach. Maya discovered patterns too. He liked the mornings best, when the sunlight filtered into the arched windows and painted the floors gold. He liked the afternoons with soft piano music playing, and he responded to rhythm. A tap on the floor, a step in time, and he would follow, mimicking gently, learning through motion what he could not yet say in words. One day, she found him watching an old photograph of his mother. The frame was dusty, the image faded, but the memory radiated from it. Maya sat quietly nearby, letting him linger in the past, letting him feel the presence of someone lost without interrupting. As the days blended into weeks, a small change emerged. He began to reach toward her hand voluntarily, guiding her into a gentle sway beside the piano. Sometimes a giggle would escape, soft and fleeting, almost lost in the stillness of the room, but enough to make her heart lift. Damien observed from afar at first, standing silently in doorways, unsure how to step back into this new world with his son. Slowly, he began to sit beside them, at first stiff and hesitant, then leaning into the rhythm, letting the music guide him as much as Ethan did. The mansion was no longer just a house filled with wealth and polished surfaces. It was a living space, breathing quietly with the small routines of a boy learning to speak without words and a young woman who had decided to stay, to be patient, to listen. Every evening, Maya would glance toward the drawing room before she left. Seeing Ethan's small figure framed in the golden light, she knew he was listening, learning, opening up at his own pace. And though silence still held much of the house, it was no longer empty. It was filled with a soft pulse of connection, of trust and a hope. Step by step, cookie by cookie, note by note, the quiet routine became the heartbeat of a small, fragile world learning to live again. The garden was alive in a way the mansion's halls could never be. Sunlight spilled across the winding paths, turning the morning dew into tiny jewels that clung to the petals of roses and tulips. The air smelled of earth and lavender, fresh and sweet, carrying a soft hum of life that seemed to seep into every corner of the sprawling estate. Maya walked slowly, carrying a small tray of tea and cookies. Ethan was already there, crouched by the stone fountain, his small hands brushing lightly over the carved edges. He didn't look up when she approached, didn't even move, but she didn't rush him. Patience had become her language. She set the tray down gently on a low bench, the clink of porcelain a soft punctuation in the quiet morning. Then she knelt beside him, just close enough to be present without intruding. For a moment, nothing happened. Ethan's gaze was fixed on the rippling water, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on the stone. Maya breathed softly, letting the silence stretch, letting him take the moment as it came. Then, slowly, he reached for a cookie, not the one she had set beside him, but another she had left in his pocket the day before. He examined it, turned it over in his small hands, and finally took a careful bite. A tiny crumb fell to the stone, and he didn't bother to pick it up. He didn't need to. He was safe here in this space, and that was enough. Maya smiled quietly. "You like it?" she whispered. No response, of course, but the way his shoulders relaxed told her all she needed to know. Then he did something new. He looked up, eyes meeting hers for a single, fleeting second. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there. A connection, fragile yet undeniable. Encouraged, Maya reached toward him slowly, letting her hand hover near his. He didn't pull away this time. Instead, he placed a small hand in hers, tentative, light, and together they walked toward the fountain. She began to tap a rhythm on the stone edge, soft and steady. He copied her, a tiny echo of the movement, then a small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. The fountain gurgled gently behind them, carrying the sound of their quiet game, their silent conversation. From a veranda above, Damien watched. He had stood there many times, uncertain, hesitant to intrude on the fragile bubble between them. But now he could see it. The first glimmer of trust, of joy, of life returning to a boy he had feared was forever lost inside his silence. Ethan's movements became more fluid, more deliberate. He twirled once near the edge of the fountain, careful yet daring. Maya mirrored him, her own movements slow, gentle, patient. And in that dance without words, they spoke volumes. He stopped, crouched again, and offered her the last bite of his cookie. Maya accepted it with a quiet laugh, letting the moment linger longer than it should, savoring the small victory. Damien descended the stairs, stepping lightly on the gravel path. He didn't interrupt, didn't speak. He simply sat on the bench nearby, watching, and in his chest, a warmth he hadn't felt in years began to unfurl, fragile and steady. The Garden of Echoes, as Maya began to think of it, wasn't just a place of stone paths and fountains. It was a space where gestures became language, where patience built bridges, and where a boy who had once hidden from the world began to leave traces of himself in every careful motion. The sun climbed higher, and the morning spilled its light across the garden. Ethan, Maya, and Damien moved in quiet harmony, learning a rhythm that needed no words, only presence, only trust, only the gentle courage to reach across silence. For the first time, the estate didn't feel lonely. It felt alive. Maya entered the music room one late afternoon, the air heavy with dust and stillness. The grand piano sat in the corner, its black lacquer dulled, a single broken string rattling faintly when the breeze stirred. She had avoided this room at first, unsure if stepping inside would shatter something fragile in Ethan. But today she needed to try. She approached slowly, brushing a finger over the keys. The note that came out was jagged, harsh, but not unpleasant, just real. Ethan sat cross-legged on the rug, watching, silent as ever, but something in his posture shifted. Maya knelt beside him. "It's okay," she whispered. "We can make it sing again together." He didn't answer, didn't need to. His small hand hovered over the keys, then landed lightly. She guided his fingers, one by one, showing him the rhythm, the touch. The broken string protested, the notes imperfect. But for the first time, he played with intention, with presence, with connection. Damien lingered in the doorway, unseen. He watched his son lean into the music, his fingers delicate, cautious, and yet bold. A breath escaped Damien's chest. A long, quiet exhale he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Maya tapped the gentle rhythm on the floor. Ethan followed, step by step, note by note. Their silent conversation grew stronger with each imperfect chord. The piano was broken, yes, but in that moment, so was the distance between them. When the last note lingered in the still air, Ethan leaned back, fingers brushing the keys, eyes catching Maya's for the briefest instant. A small smile, almost imperceptible, but enough to break something old, enough to hint at hope. For the first time, the music room felt alive. Not because it was perfect, but because it held their courage, their patience, and the quiet promise that broken things could still be beautiful. Rain tapped softly against the tall windows, a gentle rhythm that filled the mansion with a quiet hush. Maya was gathering her things, coat in hand, ready to leave for the evening, when she heard a hesitant knock at the door. She opened it to find Damien, umbrella in hand, water dripping from his shoulders, and the crumpled note she had left behind. His eyes were tired, but there was a vulnerability there she hadn't seen before. "I don't want you to leave," he said simply. Maya stepped aside wordlessly, letting him enter. He shook off the rain and stood in the kitchen, studying the steam rising from the untouched cup of tea. I reacted badly," he admitted quietly. "I was caught off guard." Maya nodded. "I understand. I didn't mean to overstep." He finally looked at her, voice low. "He looks like her when he moves, when he plays. My wife, she had a light about her. When she danced, it was like the world bent around her." Maya listened silently. "That night, I should have been there. I wasn't. I locked away her things, the music, everything that reminded us of her. I thought it was better not to see it. But he found his way back to it anyway." She stepped closer, soft. "He hasn't stopped hearing or feeling you. He listens. When you tap, he taps. When you sway, he sways. It's his way of speaking." Damien sank into a chair, the weight of years pressing down. "She called me Daddy once," he whispered, voice barely audible. "You still are," Maya said gently. Outside, the rain fell steadily, a lullaby wrapping the mansion in quiet. Inside, the space between them softened, stretched taut no longer, as a father and a boy, slowly, carefully, began to bridge the silence with presence, patience, and the courage to return. The morning sunlight spilled softly through the tall windows, dust motes floating like tiny stars in the warm light. Maya knelt beside Ethan, as she did every day, guiding his small hands through gentle taps and movements across the floor. He paused mid-step, tilting his head as if listening for something only he could hear. Maya held her breath, letting the silence stretch, letting him find his own rhythm. Then, slowly, almost tentatively, his lips moved. A single word, soft, fragile, but clear, Daddy! The room seemed to hold its breath. Maya's heart skipped a beat. She looked at Damien, who had entered quietly, drawn by the faint sound, and watched his face go still, disbelief and joy battling in his eyes. Ethan repeated it, louder this time, and the tension in the room melted. Damien knelt slowly, reaching out his hands. "Yes, I'm here," he whispered. Ethan ran into his arms without hesitation, burying his face in his father's chest. The warmth, the connection, the first spoken word. It was more than a sound. It was a bridge, a release, a beginning. Maya stepped back, smiling quietly, letting them have the moment. The mansion, once filled with silence and caution, now hummed softly with life, with hope, and with a fragile but unstoppable force of love finally finding its voice. The greenhouse glowed in the soft light of late afternoon, lanterns casting warm halos across the polished wooden floor. Maya kept the space quiet, intimate, just Damien, Ethan, and a few familiar faces. Today was special. Today, Ethan would share his world in his own way. He stepped into the center, holding the small cookie Maya had given him earlier. His hands were steady, his gaze focused, and for the first time, he looked like he belonged. Maya set herself off to the side, letting him take the stage, guiding gently when needed. Ethan began to move, slow at first, his tiny feet tracing arcs across the floor. Each step, each pause, carried rhythm, expression, and a confidence that had been absent for so long. Damien stood in the back, hands clasped tightly, heart thrumming. He watched his son spin, twirl, and tap, a wordless recital of joy and courage. Ethan even shared a small bite of his cookie mid-performance, a playful gesture that made the audience, silent, attentive, smile without words. By the end, the room was still, held in awe by the delicate balance of innocence and bravery. Damien stepped forward, kneeling, arms open. Ethan ran into them, placing his small hands in his father's, then reaching for Maya. In that moment, no words were needed. The cookie had been the key, but the real gift was connection, trust, and the courage to step into the world. Applause rose, soft and heartfelt. But the true celebration was in the quiet joy of three lives slowly coming together, learning to move, breathe, and belong as one. Sunlight streamed to the tall windows of the mansion, warming the polished floors and softening the edges of every corner. The house, once filled with silence and caution, now hummed with life. Ethan moved through rooms with quiet confidence, tapping, twirling, and reaching out in small gestures that spoke louder than words. Damien followed, learning, matching his son's rhythm, rediscovering the patience and presence he had thought lost forever. Maya lingered nearby, a gentle guide and steady presence, watching the subtle language unfold. The brush of fingertips, a small nod, a shared laugh. Every cookie, every tap on the floor, every sway had become a word, a sentence, a bridge. In the kitchen, Damien placed a fresh batch of cookies on a plate, and Ethan's eyes lit up. He reached for one, then offered one to Maya, then to his father, a silent invitation that needed no explanation. The mansion, the gardens, the once quiet rooms, they were alive with warmth, care, and trust. Here, communication wasn't only spoken. It was baked into small acts of kindness, found in movement, nurtured through patience, and carried in the courage to reach across silence. And in that language of warmth, the little family had found their way home. No words could capture everything, but here, between cookies and quiet gestures, love spoke loudest of all. If this story touched your heart and brought a little warmth to your day, please subscribe to our channel, Heartfelt Tales TV, for more stories that celebrate love, hope, and the quiet moments that change lives.